Good afternoon and welcome back to our second teleconferencing session for the post-basic BSc Nursing students of second year. May I request our regional directors kindly communicate to us how many students are sitting in the various regional centers or program study centers or any study center. The students who are watching through Gyan Darshan probably can ask the question to us directly, and also I would request the regional directors, if there are no students sitting, still kindly let us know. We came to know from Khanna there are 11 students sitting at Khanna, and there are some students sitting at Ludhiana Program Study Center and Chandigarh Study Center. Students, if you have any questions to ask, do interrupt and ask the question. The topic may sound to you very easy, but try to pick up the points which we are trying to stress in the pre-operative and post-operative care. We have with us Mrs. Harinder Goyal, who is a very senior faculty at RK College of Nursing, who has taken the earlier session on pre-operative nursing care. She is going to discuss about operative nursing care and post-operative nursing care. These may sound to be very general topics, but remember that these are the basic topics, and if you are clear about it and you know what is your role as a nurse, you will be able to allay the anxiety of the patient and provide a lot of comfort to the patient, and also see the complications are prevented. May I request Mrs. Goyal you to start about the interoperative and then go on to the post-operative nursing care.
Thank you, Mrs. Kapoor. Now, to start off with the intraoperative care, once the patient has been transferred from the ward to operation theatre, intraoperative care starts. Now, intraoperative care means the person during the operation, the care which the person requires. First of all, we need to verify the identification bracelet of a person. In the sense, we need to identify the patient with the file and with the identification slip which we have put on the patient jacket or on the clothing, which tells us about the patient's name, ward, which operation the person is, what is the MRD number, or CR number, whatsoever it is there. All the details are given, what operation, which side operation, whether it is right side, whether it is left side. All details are there that you have to again recheck with the record, that is the case record which is there, to verify the patient, because this is very important. Many times the mistakes have been made by the operation theatre staff by not identifying the person for what operation the person is, whether it is right side or left side. So in order to prevent these complications, this is very essential to exactly know which organ operation and which side, especially when it is sides which are involved: right eye, right limb, right breast, left breast, right kidney or left kidney. This is very important. So confirm the operative procedure and the site. This is what I wanted to tell you. Confirm which operation has to be done and which site. Then check the record for completeness. What all do we check for completeness? In the sense whether the consent has been taken. We make sure, though the consent has been taken already in the preoperative care phase, but at times maybe it is not taken properly. So you check for the consent again. You see, just quickly go through the history and the physical examination findings, as just to know the patient might be allergic to many things, whether it is related to some drugs or any kind, because of eating things that doesn't go in operation theatre, but especially to know if any known allergies are there. Patient may be allergic to some of the substances, just to know. So check for completeness of all the record, and then
yes, Ludhiana. Yes, Ludhiana. Yes, please.
I am speaking from Ludhiana Study Center.
Yes.
We are having about 4 to 5 BSc Nursing students attending the program.
Okay.
And they are finding it very useful here.
Yes.
I am just informing you regarding this, madam.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Right. Yes, please. May I request the Regional Director Delhi, because we know some students are sitting with you in Delhi. Let us know if they have any question to ask. Hyderabad, Chennai, Aizawl, because we are not knowing whether Aizawl students are able to see the teleconference. Bangalore, Pune, Bombay. If there is any question, please help them to ask us, or let us know how many students are sitting in the study center or regional center. Yes, Mrs. Goyal.
Okay, so once you have checked the records, things, then you see that you start off with the IV line. If the patient has already come with the IV line, fine. It depends. Otherwise, you have to start off with the IV line, and then of course the anesthesia team, including the anesthetist, they will administer the patient with the anesthesia. That is, with the general anesthesia. Then comes the what else you do in the intraoperative care is you assist in intubation and extubation. Intubation is like the patient may require endotracheal tube insertion. You help the anesthetist, you assist the person for intubation as well as for its removal later on, and then promote homeostasis. Promote hemostasis means you have to keep a check on the keep a record of the blood loss, maintain the I mean, as a nurse, what are we responsible for is keep a record of the equipment, what is used, the sponges which are used, weigh the sponges for estimating the blood loss, and measure the content of the suction bottles, because a lot of suction is done during the operation time, how much the person has lost blood in the during the operation. So this all is done, and at the same time you keep a check on the vital signs of the patient, observation, that is your especially the pulse, respiration, and the blood pressure. That will give you the rough estimate about the vital parameters of the patient. Then comes, this is all about the intraoperative care, that is the patient during the operation. Of course, assisting during the operation is carried out by the nursing staff depending upon the requirement. Now, care after the operation, that is the post-operative care.
Now, what are some of the main objectives, which we can pinpoint that these are the objectives of patient immediately after surgery?
Okay. Now, immediately after post-operative surgery is what we have to see is that patient is transported safely, safe transportation of the patient from the operating table to the recovery room, because many of the hospitals, they have attached recovery rooms to their operation theaters. So we have to see that the person is transported safely, because person might be having many tubings, after the operations, like IV line, suction, Weil's tube, indwelling catheters, or there can be many more, depending upon again the surgery which is done. So we have to be very careful while transporting these, where it has to be kept, the level where suppose if it is for the drainage bottle should not be kept at the level of the patient. Yes. It has always to be low. So things like that, one has to be very careful when you are transporting. And then
Jaipur online.
Yes, Jaipur. Yes, Jaipur.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
Good afternoon, ma'am. We have 2 students
Yes.
attending this teleconferencing.
Hello.
And when they will ask some question, we'll connect to you.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Ashwini Kumar speaking from Jaipur.
Yes, please. Very good afternoon.
We
Yes.
have 2 students with us who are watching this program.
How many students you said?
And as and when they will ask the question, we'll connect it to you.
Okay. I cannot hear you very clearly.
Okay, thank you. Over.
Is there any question student want to ask? Yes.
In case they ask some question, we'll connect it to you.
I cannot get the question very clearly. What is the question? What is it?
At present, there is no question from their side.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
As and when they will desire, we'll connect it to you.
Okay. I
Okay.
thought.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for informing. I think we got the call from Jaipur, and we know that students are sitting over there. Thank you. And Ludhiana, Khanna. We would also like to know Ahmedabad, Kochi, Tamil Nadu, Lucknow, whether there are any students sitting over there. May I request the regional directors of the regions kindly get the feedback pro forma filled and send it to us so that we know how much they have been able to gain from today's teleconference. The other thing which I want to highlight now that I have interrupted our expert, that those students who are from the pre-revised courses, and if they have to complete certain courses, may I request the regional directors to inform to the program in charges, which we are also informing, to accommodate the students with the various years, that is first year and second year, so that they can complete their practical. Because some of the people have asked us the question that how can we conduct the classes for 2-3 students. You don't have to conduct separate classes, but you know that these courses are there either with the first year or second year or pre-revised third year. So please make a schedule in such a manner so that students are able to attend to those sessions. These kind of overlapping are there whenever there is revision. So I'm sure you will be able to accommodate your students, and if you are listening at the program study centers or study centers, I'm sure all the regional directors must be listening, and if there is any question which program study center in charges ask you, you would be able to clarify. Thank you. And we were talking about, we are looking forward to more calls please from the other regions. We can go to the objectives. One, you said safe transportation.
Yeah.
You were saying recovery from anesthesia. Is there any other objective?
Yes, one more, that is we need to maintain the optimal status of patients' respiratory, circulatory, neurological system, as well as the fluid and electrolyte balance, so that the vital parameters are maintained, because anything wrong with the respiration or circulation or neurological, it's going to affect the patient's recovery. And similarly, fluid and electrolyte balance, that also we have to maintain. So these are the 3 objectives soon after the patient has had the surgery. These are the objectives. Now coming to the post-operative care. Post-operative care, there are 3 stages we generally talk as far as the patient's care in the during the post-operative phase. One is the care in the immediate period, that is immediate phase. Second is the intermediate stage, and third is the extended. We will take up one by one. So first of all, we talk about care on the immediate stage.
Before you ask for the care, we've got a fax from Cochin, Regional Director. Thank you so much, Dr. Vasudevan. There are 6 students present at the regional center. Sir, if they have any question to ask, please do facilitate them. And he has also mentioned that students are also present at Trivandrum Study Center. Thank you so much. May I request the other regional directors also to kindly let us know the number of students sitting. Sir, if they have any question to ask, to help them to ask us. You can interrupt any time. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. The immediate stage is the period between 1 to 4 hours after the surgery. Now what all are we supposed to be doing during the immediate stage in the post-operative care? First of all, we will talk about system wise, like respiratory system. We have to see, we monitor the airway patency, that we see that the airway is kept clear, patent. Means you have to position the patient, in the sense if the person is still under the effect of anesthesia, you have to see that you have the patient lying in supine position,
yes,
no pillow. But as the patient regains consciousness, it's recovering from anesthesia, a patient may be little propped up position and a little head elevation, so that person has a easy breathing. So we have to make sure at the same time person airway is patent and there is adequate ventilation, because this is very essential. If the person is not breathing well, we can land up into complications. Monitor the vital signs. Again, temperature, pulse, respiration and BP. These parameters have to be monitored. Monitor the secretions. If they are there in the air passage, then remove them by doing the suctioning. Observe the chest movements for symmetry, because this is again very important. Maybe you may find there is asymmetry in the expansion of the chest when the person is breathing, which again tells us that some complication has already occurred. So we have to see that there is a symmetrical expansion of the chest. So observe the chest movement for symmetrical expansion, and you monitor if the person is getting oxygen. If the patient is getting, because not all patients need oxygen immediately after operation. So if the person is on oxygen therapy, monitor the oxygen administration, at what rate it has to be given, and whether it is going all right or not. You have to see that it is humidified air which is going on. Maintain the pulse oximetry. If the patient is on oxygen or person is on having maybe endotracheal tube or on ventilator, the pulse oximeter is on. You have to see that the oxygen status of the person. So that will be there on the monitor. You have to observe, monitor the pulse oximetry, then assess for the breath sounds. Again, breath sounds, you have to see that you have to check, you have to auscultate the chest, whether the person has a normal breath sounds or abnormal, because if there is abnormal, means there is something, some problem is there, like rhonchi and all. If there are rhonchi rails, they are abnormal sounds. Then encourage the person, as the person is regaining the, coming out of the anesthesia, you encourage the person deep breathing and coughing exercises. Now for coughing exercises, we have to be very careful. It should not be very harsh. We have to tell the person, he has to, we have already taught him during the preoperative phase how to cough, how to deep breathe. So this is the only thing is, it's like a reminder, reminding a person to now start off with what we have taught to him in the preoperative phase. And then monitor the client for signs of atelectasis, pneumonia. These are the things, observations which are required, which pertains mainly to the respiratory system. Then about the circulatory system, we need to see assess the client's color and check the capillary fill. That is, because that will tell us whether the blood circulation is proper. So capillary refill, you know how to check it. By you press the nail bed and see whether it returns within seconds. Assess the peripheral pulses. Again, that will also tell you whether all the peripheral circulation is all right. If peripheral pulses are all right, it means peripheral circulation. We are sure that the peripheral pulses are fine. There is no problem with the circulation. Then monitor for bleeding. Monitor for bleeding means the person has had the surgery. There are chances of bleeding from the wound itself, or patient may be having some suction or drainage apparatus which has been put, which is attached. So we have to monitor that, how much drainage is there, and the wound, whether there is a lot of soakage or not, because this has to be monitored. Assess the pulse for rate and rhythm, because that also tells us about the circulatory system. Then monitor for the Hohmann sign. Hohmann sign, we need to monitor means, because if pressure on the calf muscles, if it is given, that tells us whether the patient is developing DVT or thrombophlebitis, because this happens in the post-operative patients many times. Then musculoskeletal system, we need to assess the client for moving the extremities, whether the person is moving extremities all right after the operation or there is something wrong. Unless contraindicated, place the client in low phallus position for better lung expansion, because in some surgeries.
Yes, Bhuvneshwar. Yes, Bhuvneshwar.
Good afternoon. This is S.S. Jena.
Yes, Dr.
From
Jena.
Regional Center, Bhubaneswar.
Yes.
There are 2 students are participating in this program.
Okay.
And one of the student wants to ask some question.
Sure. Most welcome.
Handing over to the student.
Yes.
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, I am Chandana from Regional Center, Bhubaneswar.
Okay.
I am second year BSc nursing student, madam. Ma'am, one question is, please explain something more about palliative care, ma'am.
Okay.
What is palliative care?
All right. We'll do that.
Should we do it now itself? Or?
Maybe just a few words we say and then we can further move. Right, you'll get the answer. Yes.
Now it's
After you finish up this, we
Okay.
can do it.
okay. So assess the client for moving
One
of the
second question,
extremities.
madam.
Sorry? We'll be
One
just
second question,
explaining.
ma'am. What is the nurse's role in preoperative medication?
Nurse's role in
During
preoperative.
preoperative medication, what is our role?
Okay. So you have 2 questions. One is what is the role of a nurse in preoperative medication?
Over, ma'am.
Okay. And the other question is that palliative care. Maybe when you finish up this, then you can take up both.
Okay. So unless contraindicated, the patient has to be put in the kept in the low phallus position. That's mainly for the proper lung expansion. And if the client is in comatose condition, the patient has to be kept side lying with head turned to one side to prevent any aspiration of the secretions. Then neurological system, we need to assess the patient's level of consciousness, because patient may not be fully conscious as the person is recovering from anesthesia. We can assess the level of consciousness. Then orient the as the patient is regaining consciousness, you orient the person to the environment where the person is. what's the time, to the time, place and person where you are, at what time, where you are, and who are you.
Yes, Cochin. Yes, Cochin.
Hello, good afternoon. We have already given you the attendance.
Yes.
And there is a question from one of the students.
Okay. Most welcome. What's the question like?
Thank you, madam. I am Mary Varghese from second year nursing student.
Okay.
I want a brief discussion about the management of burn patient, madam.
Oh, you want to see burn patient management to talk separately may be a little difficult at the moment. I know this is one of your question in assignment. Okay. So, but if you open the module, that is given beautifully about the burn area and management. Okay, if there is any specific thing related to management, we can tell you, but probably this is the answer to your assignment you are asking for. Okay, so try to pinpoint and tell us what exactly you want to know in management. Okay. I hope Dr. Vasudevan, she's satisfied, and if she can pinpoint and tell us what exactly she wants to know, we will tell her, because management of the patient with burns itself is a full topic. So we will just go to this, and then if there are any specific points, we will be able to clarify. Yes.
Okay. So orienting the patient to the environment is again is the next step, in the sense as the patient regains consciousness, and maintain the body temperature to prevent the further heat loss. Then temperature control has to be done, in the sense maintain the body temperature, because sometimes it's the hypothermia machine which is being used during operation, especially cardiovascular and neuro operations which go on for long. There's a use of hypothermia machine. So generally you may find during the recovery period patient's temperature is quite low. So you may have to give these patients, keep them warm, not heat up, in the sense not by other external means, in the sense you supply enough blankets, so just to keep the body warm, to maintain the body temperature. Then monitor for the signs of hypothermia, because patients low body temperature is also not good, because slowly the body temperature will come up as you keep the patient body warm. Then you check for the integumentary system, the person's skin, that is assess the surgical site drains and the wound dressings, monitor for and document any drainage and bleeding, and assess for redness, any abrasions. Then you also keep a check on fluid and electrolytes, monitor the IV administration, intravenous administration, as to how much has to be given, maintain a proper intake output chart, and monitor for signs of, we are talking about electrolytes, we have to see that, monitor for the signs of hypokalemia, metabolic and respiratory alkalosis. Keep a watch on these things. Of course, you will have the blood values also side by side taken, so you will know that the patient is getting the enough fluids and electrolytes. Then GI system is, as far as GI system is concerned, depending upon the operation, you do monitor for nausea and vomiting. Maintain if the person has a nasogastric or Ryle's tube in, you see that it is patent, and if the suctioning has to be done intermittently or continuously, accordingly it is done. You need to monitor for abdominal distension, because if in cases of abdominal surgery, abdominal distension is not a good sign, because it has a effect on the suture line, yes, on the incision area. So see that there, observe for any abdominal distension, and monitor for the return of bowel sounds, because bowel sounds, once they come up, means the GI system has started working, and maybe that's an indication that we can start off with the oral fluids. And then the renal system, the kidneys, that is assess for the bladder for distension. Normally we expect the client to void within 6 to 8 hours after surgery, normally. But if the person doesn't pass urine within 6 to 8 hours of surgery, it is our responsibility to use the various nursing measures to make the person pass urine. Otherwise, we may have to, you inform the doctor, and we may have to catheterize the patient.
Yes, Hyderabad. Yes, Hyderabad.
Madam, I'm Jessica speaking from Hyderabad Center.
Yes.
We are 4 students attending now.
Okay.
We have some doubts, madam.
Sure.
First is from our batch.
Yes.
First about the results.
Results.
Second is we have to prepare for the exam.
Yes.
Until now we didn't get the results.
Yes. Well, I think
Third is, can we write this first year?
Your question is right, and I'm sure you have filled up the form also. If you have not filled up the form, kindly fill up the form with the late fee because the results have not been announced. Normally in the orientation we tell our teachers to inform the students that even though the result is not announced, the student must fill up the forms for all the subjects. So if you have filled up the forms, it is good, but result will definitely be announced before the exam in June. It is getting processed and it will take little time. So it will be announced before your exam, but nevertheless fill up your examination forms so that you don't miss the chance. And if you have not filled up the form, then pay the late fee and fill up the form. Okay? So this is very important if you have not done it. But if you have done it, just don't worry. If the result is not announced, probably you can sit in the exam. But I'm sure the result will be announced much before that. So please don't worry about that. But please fill up the form because we don't want you to miss the chance. I'm sorry for the delay of result, but you know the system is so big and there are so many students. So it takes little time, for the system to get organized in a way so that we are able to announce the result on time. This year it is little late, but we are just trying to cope up with it. Whatever results have come, I think they are going to put on the website soon, so you would know them. Okay, I know what anxiety you are going through. I can really empathize with you. That's all I can say at the moment. Mrs. Goyal, you were talking about the renal system. Yes. One of the immediate pre-operative management is pain management.
Yeah, pain management, we have to see that the person is, we need to assess for the patient pain, how much the pain has, because it is subjective. It's the patient only can say how much the pain is. That's what we monitor the objective data related to the pain. We can make use of, visual analog scale, or we can ask the person from 0 to 10 how much is the pain, like just to know the severity of the pain, whether 0 means no pain and 10 means the severe pain, and we can tell him to quantify how much is the pain. The middle 5 is mild pain. So quantify the pain just to have the more objective data related to the pain. And this pain should not be neglected in the sense we may have to administer the medications which are already prescribed, because generally there are PRN medications advised by the surgeon in the post-operative, in the post-op orders. So according to that, the painkillers have to be given. But we can make use of other methods also, using non-invasive techniques for pain management. Like we can have, relaxation exercises, diversional therapy. These things are quite helpful so that the patient forgets the pain.
Yes. Now, before we go to the care during the intermediate stage, I think we have just 2 small questions, 3 questions in a way. One is pre-operative medication. Yeah. What is a nurse's role? I think we have discussed, but just to highlight quickly, what is the role of a nurse in pre-operative medication? And I think it's a very significant role of a nurse.
Now, pre-operative medication, as far as this is concerned, as I have already told you, that pre-operative medication is ordered by the pre-anesthetic checkup people. So when we send the patient for pre-anesthetic checkup, once the patient comes back, we should see their orders first, because pre-medication, it is given a day before surgery, also at night, and some medication has to be given on the day of surgery. So we have to be sure of what is to be given and at what time it has to be given. That is again important. Another thing is, morning when you give whatever you give, the charting is again very important. At what time it has been given and how much it has been, the dose is given, because the transportation after giving the pre-medication, it becomes another important issue. at what time, because patient may already be sedated already. If you have given ahead of surgery, quite ahead of surgery, the patient might be sedated already in the ward itself when you transport.
Yes, Hyderabad. Yes, Hyderabad.
I have one question from medical and surgical.
Yes.
Question number 1,
Uh-huh.
pre and post operative care
Uh-huh.
with the nursing process.
Uh-huh.
How to write with nursing process, madam?
Okay. How do you write with the nursing process? This is again probably the part of your assignment. See, when any condition is given to you in your assignment or in your examination for that matter, that a patient is admitted with say renal dialysis or is put on hemodialysis, write the nursing management based on the nursing process. You may kindly correct me. Then you will have to do as a nurse that what kind of assessment are you going to do? Assessment of the needs of the patient who is undergoing hemodialysis, and when you do the assessment of the need, then you will also list the needs, prioritize the needs, and also you will make the nursing diagnosis. One of the nursing diagnoses may be electrolyte imbalance. Am I right?
Yeah, that's
One
right.
of the nursing diagnoses may be electrolyte imbalance. The patient is on hemodialysis. How will you maintain the electrolyte imbalance? That comes the plan of the second step of planning. So planning may be discussed with the surgeon that this much is the urine output, this is the problem the patient is facing. So discuss that with the surgeon and maintain intake, ensure that you maintain intake output chart. Those kind of things will be listed in the planning. When it comes to implementation, that means you have to strictly maintain intake output chart, measure yourself the urine output so that we know the functioning of kidney. Then check the temperature, record the temperature, record the pulse and aspiration. That means implementation of what you had planned based on the nursing diagnosis of fluid imbalance of alternative fluid and electrolyte balance.
That's right.
And then of course evaluation, whether in your period of care of patient of 8 hours, whether the urine output was say 20 cc, 30 cc, 40 cc, that remark is that the patient has the kidneys have started functioning and the urine output is this much, and also what is the condition of the patient, no nausea, no vomiting, So this is one of the example which I am giving you, that when you talk about any medical surgical condition, and if you have to base the nursing care on the nursing process, it is just what you do and make the steps. You want to add something, Mrs. Goyal?
No, that's perfectly all right, because it's all totally based on the nursing needs of the patients.
Yes.
Any medical surgical condition, you have to assess for the needs first, what problems the patient has. Based on those, we plan the care, we implement, we carry out, and then we see the outcome.
And you also need to have a rationale.
Yes.
Why did you do that, Why you thought of seeing that the patient's electrolyte imbalance is to be maintained? Because it's a kidney, is a function of the kidney which is getting disturbed, So the rationale has to be there. Hope we have answered your question. If you're still not clear, you are most welcome to ask us again. You were talking about the
pre-medication, I think I have already answered.
The other question was palliative care.
Now, palliative care is the care which is given to the patients on whom the other treatment fails, or other treatments have already been done, but nothing much can be done for these patients. And these are like mainly these cancer patients, in the terminal stage where nothing much can be done. They've already had the chemotherapy, they've already had the radiotherapy, they might have had even the surgeries.
Yes.
But now to prolong the life, to add life, to add years to the life, quality life, we have this palliative care. So depending upon the problems what they have, according to that, the care which is given. Like patient is having pain, you take care of the pain. If the person is having a problem with the nutritional needs, something is pressing somewhere, the person is not able to take normally, so you make a gastrostomy. Person is not having some problem with the GI tract in the elimination pattern, you have a patient undergo colostomy. I mean, there is no, only thing is you are increasing the lifespan of a patient in palliative care, and keeping in mind that all the it's like a symptomatic management of a person. Whatever the person complains, accordingly those needs are met. Well,
Sorry.
yeah, it can be, even the surgeries can be done in the palliative care, as a part of palliative care. It's not a cure, but it is because the person had the problem of some obstruction, so to remove the obstruction you perform the surgery. But that's again, it's not a cure, but it's a palliative care.
And it is basically the symptomatic, as Mrs. Goyal said. If the patient has nausea, the nausea is relieved.
Yes.
If the patient has a feeling of vomiting, you try to use the nursing measures to see that the vomiting is reduced. And if it cannot be reduced, maybe then antiemetic as prescribed by the doctors are given. So that's what we mean by palliative care. And you will learn your block 4 in detail when we talk about oncology nursing. That will be discussed in detail. Let's just pinpoint few of the points which she wanted to find out about management of patient with burns, because maybe it's a part of assignment, but doesn't matter. If few important points, like it's very important to maintain the electrolyte balance.
Electrolytes.
Or maybe just few points you can tell them.
Because it's mainly the electrolytes and the fluids which get disturbed in a patient with any kind of burn. So fluid and electrolyte balance you have to see. So you have to see that how much is ordered, that is given, in particular hours, because it is maintained. It's not the orders are given for 24 hours. It's given, say, every 6 hours or every 8 hours. Within 8 hours, this much fluid has to go. This much fluid, colloids, and this much has to be, the fluid. So that has to be seen. Another is the urine output.
Yeah, very
That's
important.
very essential, because normally these patients are put with the urinary catheter, and every hour the urine output is assessed, and minimum should be 30 milliliter.
Yes.
If it is less than 30 milliliter, the patient may be going into renal failure. So this is very essential. Apart from the other care, the care of a burnt area,
Temperature regulation.
temperature regulation, using how to handle the patient with the cradle. Generally depending upon the patients where the burn is. Accordingly, the other part is taken care of.
Also, I think one important factor is psychological care.
Psychological care, yeah.
Because these patients are really very upset about the burns and the parts of their body which is burnt, and they require very good psychological counseling, and that should be done very regularly with the patients
Pain.
and also with the relatives. And
Pain management.
Pain management is very important, especially during the dressing.
And then rehabilitation.
Yes.
Because it causes a lot of disfigurement, contractures if it is not taken care of well, disabilities. So that's a very important component of any burn patient.
So the complication preventions have to be there.
Yes.
So I hope we have not answered your question fully, we know it, but we have certain points which are very, very essential in management of patient with burns. We have tried to highlight those points. Now, we have just left with 5 minutes only. Can we quickly go through the care during intermediate stage, just to give idea?
Care during the intermediate stage. Intermediate period is like period from 4 to 24 hours after the surgery. What we have discussed in care in immediate period, that also goes in the intermediate stage, because all the observations depending upon the system, that has to go on during this phase also, because this is a very critical stage. 24 hours between 4 to 24 hours after surgery. So all the assessments need to be made during this phase, which are discussed already in the immediate phase. Then care during the extended phase means that is the period of at least 1 to 4 days post-operatively. So this is like all the observations which we have already talked about during the immediate phase all have to be carried out. Apart from that, care of the wound has to be done, ambulation has to be seen, and patient's general well-being, and you have to see that when the tubings have to be out, like if the patient has a Ryle's tube, when it has to be out, once the bowel sounds are heard. If it's an abdominal surgery, you remove the Ryle's tube. Similarly, the other drainage tubings which are there, if it becomes less, it depends where it is, where they are. If it is chest drainage, if the secretions are becoming less, the lungs are the lungs have full expansion. You have seen on the X-ray chest, and the patient has no problem with the breathing. That's an indication for removal of the chest catheter. So depending upon the tubings, whatever the person has, urinary catheter, like if the patient has, these are removed during this stage, and it is seen that the patient is observed for all the parameters, that they are within the normal limits. Any problem related to these are notified and cared for during the extended phase of.
And I think if we go through the immediate problems, post-operative complications are like shock is
Yes.
an immediate complication, and pain.
Yeah.
A person feels chilliness, and chillness is there, hemorrhage and vomiting. It can be internal hemorrhage or it can be a hemorrhage from the wound. But what are the delayed complications?
Yeah, delayed postoperative complications can be in the form of pulmonary disturbances. Pulmonary disturbances means like in the form of pneumonias, atelectasis. They are delayed postoperative complications, or aspiration pneumonias. The person has aspirated. Then bowel disturbances can be there in the form of constipation. It can be in the form of diarrheas. Then urinary infections, thrombosis, or thrombophlebitis, and wound complications can be there, and that is the delayed complications. Wound complications here, I just want to say, is here we can have in the form of wound dehiscence or wound evisceration. Wound dehiscence is like the wound is not healing well, and the sutures have given way. The sutures have broken. The patient has to be again taken to the OT and has to be resutured. And wound evisceration is again, it's like a wound dehiscence, but the viscera, that the internal structures are coming out of the wound when the patient is breathing. So you have to keep a watch on these complications during.
Okay, I think this was a very good discussion on post-operative nursing care of a patient in general surgery. Thank you so much, Mrs. Goyal, for being with us and talking in a very simple way but very comprehensive about the post-operative management, including the immediate and delayed complications post-operatively. We will have a break of 10 minutes, and we will come back to discuss on your course on mental health nursing. So please be with us so that we are able to discuss on mental health nursing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to our third teleconferencing session for the post-basic BSc nursing students of IGNOU. You have already heard in 2 sessions about the medical surgical nursing, and you have gone through the experience shared by the experts on pre-operative nursing care, intraoperative nursing care and post-operative nursing care for patients undergoing surgery. Now we are going to discuss about mental health nursing. Mental health nursing is another important course of your second year courses, and we will be we have 4 blocks of mental health nursing, out of which we are going to talk about the basic ideas, that is the basic concepts about learning the mental health nursing. Once you have had the once you have developed the depth of knowing what is psychopathology in human behavior, it will be very easy for you to understand the symptoms which patient is presenting in various conditions. This is the Bible of your the first chapter of the Bible, I would say, of looking after the patients with mental illnesses. So listen today, go and read, and if you don't understand, you can always ask questions, and try to make a small little diary for yourself, and if whatever symptoms the experts are going to discuss, try to see them in the ward when you work in the psychiatric ward and relate it to what you have heard. Then you will be able to register those symptoms much better. So with this introduction, I have on my extreme left Mrs. Raminder Kalra. She is a senior faculty at RAK College of Nursing, University of Delhi, and I'm sure you will be able to get a lot of expert guidance from her when she's talking about psychopathology. On my immediate left, I have Mrs. Annie Kumar. She is one of the senior faculty at Lady Hardinge Medical School of Nursing, which is going to be College of Nursing soon, I understand. And she has got a rich experience in mental health and psychiatric nursing. We are very pleased to have both of you here. I thought before we go into discussing what are some of the types of psychopathological disorders, let us know what is psychopathology and why the term psychopathology is used and not as pathophysiology. Mrs. Annie Kumar.
Psychopathology is the systematic study of abnormal experience, cognition and behavior. It involves observation and categorization of abnormal psychic events. When we say that the person is having some physical disorder, you will be observing the sign and symptoms like fever, jaundice, nausea, etc. So if the person is having some mental disorder, you will be observing the sign and symptoms as changes or abnormalities in the behavior, in the thought, in the motor activity, in the various other like memory, orientation, etc. So we are studying the different types of disorders in all these levels of human psyche or human mind.
So that is why probably it is called psychopathology.
Psychopathology. For example, if a person is coming with depression, you will be observing what mood she has, what type of activity she is having, what is the level of memory, what is the level of judgment she is having. So thus we discuss the various types of psychopathology.
So that's where we say that these are the abnormal changes taking place in the psyche of the individual. When you said behavior, that means when the person is in depression, why the person is behaving like that, what has happened, why not normal. So that are the changes, pathological changes in the psyche of the individual. Whereas pathophysiology, as you were saying, that a patient comes with appendicitis and has a fever and has vomiting and nausea, those are the pathological changes taking place in the organs
and tissues of the human organ.
Tissues of the human organ. So this is probably the basic difference, but definitely there is a pathology in both the conditions. Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, many times it is said that this particular person is prone to this kind of disorder, and we call it as type of personality disorders. Each one of us, we have a typical personality. Some of us, we have cyclothymic personality, some of us we have got the other kind of personality, but all of us we are not prone to sicknesses.
Yes.
So how would you describe the types of personality disorder, Mrs. Annie would like to say some?
Personality disorders are the way one is differ from other personalities. Even though they do not make some pathology in the person, but there are some deviations in the personality or in the behavior of the person.
Okay.
So many times it go unnoticed, but the person living with the other people who living with the person will be seeing that some type of disorder is there present in the persons. So let us discuss the different types of personality disorders commonly observed in human beings. First of all, cyclothymic personality. The word cycle itself means that there is some type of rotation. So the cyclothymic means the person will be having mood swings. Like you will not be able to predict what is the personality of the person. Like at some time he will be happy, enjoying life. The other moment he will be sad, looking sad and feeling alone. So that is a personality known as cyclothymic. Then the next personality is hypomanic. Mania, everybody knows, that is hyperactivity, overjoy. The person will be always in a the mood disorder, that is elated mood. So hypomanic personality comes a little below the elated mood, but the person will be always happy, happy-go-lucky personality. Person will be energetic, confident, aggressive, optimistic, pleasure-seeking type of personality. Then next is the melancholic personality. Melancholic are people who are kind, sympathetic, quiet and good-tempered, but they tend to get easily depressed type of personality. They express feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. They are usually preoccupied with work, perfectionist, but these type of people are more, you can say, prone to get disorder, which type of depression. Then the fourth type of personality disorder is paranoid. Paranoid, the word itself means the people will be suspicious. They will be stubborn, lonely, insecure, unhappy, very sensitive and sarcastic. They will be more argumentative, aggressive and criticizes others. They does not keep good interpersonal relationship. These are the main
my question is this, that each one of us, we have some kind of personality or the other. You may call it as a hypomanic or melancholic or paranoid. So far it does not interfere with our routine activities. We may not call it as a disorder.
Yes.
The moment it starts interfering in our routine activity and we are just not able to progress other than clinging to our personality traits, then of course it becomes abnormal and one becomes sick. But otherwise each individual has a type of personality, but people are able to carry on that kind of a life without having much of disruption. Sometimes you say, come on, let's invite such and such person, hypomanic, so you may call it a hypomanic personality, but that person is a live wire in the party. You enjoy when she or he comes, So that is a hypomanic personality as per se, but otherwise the person is not having any of these symptoms to disturb his or her routine activity. So probably we may not call it as disorder.
Then when they get into the extremes, then they become pathogenic.
And they are not able to carry on the routine activities. Right, but there are other kinds of, these are the major, but there are other kind of personality also. Mrs. Kalra, would you like to add few?
Yeah, some of the other personality disorders are, like one is schizoid personality. If you see to the schizoid personality, these are the people who have feeling of loneliness, isolation. They are very timid. They have lot of shyness. They may keep themselves busy with the books. They are asocial. They don't like to interact with the people. They remain busy in their own work. They remain quiet, they do not trust others, and they have feeling of loneliness. They prefer being aloof to the opposite sex. And these type of personality people are prone to schizophrenia. When we say prone to schizophrenia, that means once they come through a lot of stress in life.
Yes, Khanna. Yes, Khanna.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
This is Prasad once again calling from Khanna.
Yes.
I have a small observation to mention over here.
Yes.
That this time the schedule which we have got for EduSet schedule 2006.
Yes.
It was not mentioned that today's program is basically for BSc nursing first year students or second year students. So that should be taken care of in future.
Okay.
So that we should call the specific group of students. Today what has happened, we have invited few students of first year as well, because it was not mentioned in the letter. So please be specific while you send the letters to us. This time you please check it that this was not mentioned. That is what I have to say. Thank you and over.
Thank you so much for pinpointing, because it was decided in the school that we will email to all the regional directors, and I do not know where the gap was. I'll go and check the email which was sent by one of our faculty members, but to the teachers, to the program in charges, we have clearly written it is second year students, and I'm sure the program in charge have equal role like our regional directors in terms of communicating. But I'll go and check how it was missed on the email, because it was decided that we will quickly put it on the email and say what is new. So I'll go and check what was put by the faculty member, and we ensure that we do not make this mistake in future if it has happened. Thank you very much for bringing it to our notice, because otherwise students are going to miss, and some students, they don't need to spend so much of time now. Thank you very much. We were talking about the schizoid personality, and we go on to the OCD.
Next one, yeah, obsessive compulsive personality is another personality disorder. Now, these are the personality people who are very rigid, meticulous. You find some people, they are over concerned about the cleanliness. They want to keep everything in a very orderly manner. If suppose this pen is to be kept here, it should not be disturbed. If somebody comes and picks up and keeps there, they get disturbed, and immediately they'll come back and keep the pen back. Now they are very orderly, they can't work under pressure, and they do not relax. They can't make decisions, and if they do make the decisions, they regret on the decisions that they have made. It is the superego which dominates and keeps telling them this is the way, ideal way, you should be doing like this, and because of this thing only these symptoms appear.
Yes, Bhopal. Yes, Bhopal.
Professor, good evening, Professor Bimla Kapoor and other experts.
Good evening.
Dr. Swaroop from Bhopal.
Yes.
We made arrangements at Bhopal and Indore also for our students.
Yes.
But at Bhopal, the students are occupied with duties, so they could not come. You know, we have been informing all our students regularly.
Thank you so much.
And thank you.
Thank you so much, and we will also tell our program in charge to inform, to ensure that the students come. Thank you very much. Yes, you were talking about OCD.
Yeah, obsessive compulsive personality people, and these people, whenever they go through a lot of stress in life, they are prone to develop obsessive compulsive disorder. Another type of personality disorder is hysterical personality. These are the people who are self-centered. There's dramatization, exhibitionism. Their affect is labile, and they are prone to emotional outburst. They show attention-seeking behavior, and they get frustrated very easily. Hysterical personality people are prone to hysteria, which we call it as conversion disorder in our new classification. ICD-10 classification says it as conversion disorder. Then another type of personality disorder is passive aggressive personality. Passive aggressive personality is of different type. Like we have passive dependent type of personality. There is absence of mature self-confidence and self-reliance. They are not able to take decision, and they feel helpless. They are passive, timid and fearful. They depend on others for decision. This is passive dependent type. That means they are passive as well as dependent on others. Then another type is passive aggressive type, who are aggressive, doubtless and defensive, which is expressed by stubbornness and inefficiency. They usually work poorly in groups. Then another type of passive aggressive personality is aggressive type. Aggressive word itself says that they show a lot of aggression. They are open to they are openly hostile, and they have problem in their relationship with their fathers in early life. They have deep dependency need, and aggression comes as a form of reaction formation. Reaction formation you must have learned in your general psychology as one of the defense mechanism, where in order to come out any hostile feelings, a person start taking extra care towards the person to whom for whom there are hostile feelings, and they show continuous frustration. Then another type of personality disorder is explosive personality. Explosive personality people, they are friendly, happy, likable and outgoing, but in outburst they show uncontrolled hostility. The explosive, that means whenever they are not able to control the emotions, there is going to be outburst of emotions which are shown. They have lot of hostility, guilt and anxiety. They show disproportionate emotional reaction. That means whatever is the emotional reaction expected, they show opposite of that. They may become aggressive, destructive, assaultive when they are going through any stress. Jealousy and quarrel with opposite sex and suicidal attempts in response to frustrations are common in people suffering from explosive personality. Any stress which they are not able to control, they might be going in and thinking about suicidal ideas might be coming, and they might go in for suicidal attempts. Then there is another type of personality disorder which we call it as inadequate personality. That means they have failure in emotional, economic, occupational and social adjustment. They are ineffective and unconcerned about their success in spite of being good-natured and easygoing. They lack ambition, initiativeness, and they lack physical and emotional stamina. Now when we talk about all these personality disorders, as it has been stressed earlier also, it does not mean that the people suffering from these type of or having these type of personality people are abnormal. But when these traits they become predominant so much that the person is not able to cope up with day-to-day activities, and it starts interfering with their social life, with their occupational functioning and in other aspects of life, then it becomes pathological and may take the form of some other illness.
Well, I think that's very important, and especially when you are going to do mental status examination or take the history of the patient, you will be able to, ask this kind of question to know what kind of personality this patient has. And when we talk about the mental status examination, we'll be able to correlate it very well. Now, remember, in psychopathology of the individual has thinking process, activity, type of personality, type of behavior. Behavior includes the mood of the person, the intelligence level, the orientation. So when we are talking about the changes in the individual, we will talk about the disorder at each level of these kind. For example, let us now take, we said what kind of personality an individual has. Now, what are some of the activity disorders the patient would, the person can have when there is abnormal changes or when there are mental alterations, mental illnesses. So, the activity is very important, because activity gets affected with our thinking process and with our doing process. So, and what attitude we have towards that particular activity. Suppose you like something to do, you do it very quickly. If you don't like something to do, you don't want to do it, and you do it in a very, very slow manner. But there must be certain changes which are taking place due to which you do not perform those activities well. So we'll be talking about disorder of motor activity, and I request Annie Kumar madam to tell us what are some of the disorders of motor activity.
Okay, motor activity of the human behavior, we can also say it as conation.
Yes.
And there are different types of disorders, includes like increased motor activity, decreased motor activity and repetitive activities. Coming to increased motor activity, the person most of the time, the increased motor activity will not be goal directed. Sometimes it may be goal directed, but in the patients or symptom, when we say, we can observe that they are not goal directed, and the patients, they are not able to complete one activity because they will be not concentrating and they will be shifting from one activity to other. They won't be able to sit quietly for a while, they will be in action all the time, and it is one of the major feature of mania. It can be related to flight of ideas and other affective disorders also. Then decreased activity in which patient takes a long time to start the activity, and once they start also, they will be doing it very slowly. They have to make a lot of efforts to do the activity. It is also known as decreased psychomotor activity or psychomotor retardation. In extreme form, the patient will be motionless and mute. This occurs in conditions like severe depression, catatonic stupor, etc.
Then you have certain disactivities or repetitious activities. Mrs. Kalra, would you like to highlight that?
Yeah, repetitious activity, when we talk about whenever an activity is being repeated again and again, it might be some disorder which is present. Under this, we have got stereotype activity. Under stereotype, there may be stereotype position, stereotype speech. Under stereotype position, when we talk, there is catalepsy. Catalepsy is constantly maintained immobility of position. That means the person remains in that position for hours together. There are sometimes patients admitted in the ward, psychiatry ward, when you go and interact, the family members might tell, like recently we had one of the patients who used to stand in hot sun for hours together. They'll say that she'll go out and stand in hot sun and will keep standing from morning to evening. Family members will try to go and remove her from there, but she won't get, she won't agree to move from there. This is, or maybe the person is lying down in the same position for hours together. It might be very uncomfortable position. This is catalepsy. Then is waxy flexibility or stereoflexibility, where patient limbs may be flexed like a wax in awkward position. That if suppose you have gone to check the pulse of the patient's hand you raise little up. Now this is a very uncomfortable position. You forgot to keep it down. Usually the patients, whenever you check the pulse, patients will automatically take it down as soon as you have removed your hand. But these type of patients may remain in that position for hours together and may not take down the upper limb down. Now this is waxy flexibility, and it is very commonly seen in patients suffering from catatonic schizophrenia. Then there may be stereotype movement, under which we have got mannerism. This again is seen in schizophrenia. There may be grimaces, repeated gestures, there may be peculiarities of gait. I remember once we had a patient in NIMHANS, and that patient would go and touch any person who is entering the gate. He would go and touch that person's feet. This was out of the guilt feeling that the person had, but later on it became as a mannerism, and he had to touch the feet. Even if the person is entering the gate for the 10th time in a day, he must go and touch. So this is mannerism. Again, it is commonly seen in schizophrenia. Then there may be stereotype speech, under which we have got verbituration or word salad. As this word itself indicates, word salad means there is mixing up of the words, phrases that cannot be completed in a form of sentence, just the words are being jumbled together. Then is clang association. This is repetition of rhythmic words, like maybe bat, rat, cat, sat. The words which are in rhythm, they are being spoken. That is clang association. Another disorder of motor activity can be negativism. Many times when you look after patients in psychiatry ward, you might find that there are patients, you go and talk to them, you ask them to sit and they won't do that. You ask them to open the mouth and they close it very tight. Now this is opposition and resistance to what is suggested. Whatever you ask, they will oppose. You go and ask the patient to have food, patient refuses to have food. This is a form of negativism shown by the patient. It is not that the patient is having anorexia and is refusing to have food because of anorexia, but this is the person might be hungry, and maybe you leave the food on the bedside, go away, and the patient eats all that food once you are not there. So that is what is negativism. This is also to gratify, acting out the hostile and revengeful feelings towards significant person. Then there is another disorder like compulsion, which is morbid and often an irresistible urge to perform purposeless act repetitiously. Like you find there is a person who wants to again and again go and wash the hands. Person washes the hand, usually we might wash once or twice, but this person may be washing the hands 30 times, 40 times, has to count that yes, if I have to count, wash my hands, I must do it 30 times. If I am doing particular activity, I must check that I have done this activity for these number of times. If the person is getting disturbed in between, the person has to restart. And often compulsive activities are associated with obsessive thoughts, which is one of the disorder of thought. In obsession, there is a thought which comes repetitiously in the person's mind. Maybe that my hands are dirty. This is a thought which comes into mind, and the person does an act of washing the hands. Now washing hands is to satisfy or to decrease the anxiety produced by the thought, obsessive thought. Once the person does the activity, the anxiety is relieved for some time, but again the thought keeps coming, and again this compulsive activities they start, and this is a common feature seen in obsessive compulsive disorder. Then another disorder of motor activity is violence, where the person shows lot of aggressiveness. It may be in the form of murder, assault, rape, damage to self and others. Then another disorder of motor activity is suicide. Suicide is self-destruction. We hear a lot about suicide, especially during the time when there is examination result, person undergoing stress. Similarly, persons who are suffering from major depressive disorder, they have suicidal ideas and they are prone to commit suicide. This is another psychopathological behavior which is manifested.
And other than depressive patients, sometimes it is under the effect of the drugs
hallucinations.
also.
Sometimes it can be even because of the hallucinations and the delusions. They get the hallucinations, as Mrs. Annie is going to describe now. It is the person hears some sounds, something in ears which the person is not able, actually which does not exist. He says, I heard something, somebody is telling me that go and kill somebody. There may be act of violence shown. Person may be getting some voice, kill yourself, and out of those hallucinations the person commits suicide.
Well, I think this is one of the major disorders. One of the other point which we can discuss is automatic behavior. Yeah. And in automatic behavior, we have the patient who follow compulsively the orders or suggestions and requests which they see around or they hear. Echolalia is that when the person is speaking and this particular patient tries to imitate and follow and repeats the same words. And again, it is seen in patients with schizophrenia.
Yeah, catatonic schizophrenia very commonly seen, both in the catatonic withdrawn as well as catatonic excitement. You go and ask the patient, what is your name? Patient, instead of telling the name, says, what is your name?
Yes.
Echopraxia, similarly, you go and do certain actions, maybe you're checking the temperature and then you try to bring down the mercury level and the person also starts doing like this. That is echopraxia. Whatever action you're doing, like you're moving your hand like this and the person also starts moving their hands like this. That is echopraxia.
So as I was telling you that we are dealing with a human being, and a human being has got, moves, there are personalities, there are also person perceives things, thinks about it. So the disorders will be at each level. As Mrs. Kalra was mentioning, that the person will have the perceptual disorders also. Now the common perceptual disorders which we see will be discussed with Mrs. Annie Kumar, as Mrs. Kalra said. Yes, please.
Yes. Perception disorders are very common in mentally ill patients, but commonly the students make the mistake that they mistake with perception and thought. Yes. So in psychiatry you should be clear that what you mean by perception, what you mean by thought. Perception is how you perceive, that is with your five senses, like you are hearing, you are seeing, you are smelling, and you are having the feeling of touch, etc. And the disorders commonly seen in perception are illusion and hallucination. Illusion is the misinterpretation of a stimulus. For example, somebody mistaking a rope and thinking that it is a snake, perceiving it as a snake. If you are showing something to, for example, a stick to a patient and asking what is it, patient may say that it is a snake. So that is illusion. Hallucination is there is no stimulus but they are perceiving, like they are, as Madam Kalra told, they are hearing voices but there is no actual voice, or they are seeing things when there is nothing is seen in front of the patient. And it is commonly experienced by schizophrenic patients. The types of hallucinations are, first is auditory hallucination. They are most common form of perceptual disturbances seen mainly in schizophrenic patients. They are sometimes in the form of noises and commonly clear words which are spoken by the patient. They are saying somebody is calling me, like she said, somebody is telling me to go and kill somebody, somebody is telling me to go and kill yourself. So these are the auditory hallucinations. But the patient may say, sister, I am hearing voices. Why you are not hearing them? Actually the nurse is not hearing, but she knows that it is a part of the illness. It is a symptom experienced by the patient. Then visual hallucination. These are not as common as auditory hallucinations. They are commonly seen in delirium, tremens and schizophrenia, in which patient sees terrifying images. It causes fear in the patient. Patient may say, I am seeing somebody who is dead long time back is standing in front of me. And you should understand as a nurse that this is a common symptom seen in the patient. Then olfactory hallucination. These are hallucination of smell, commonly seen in schizophrenic with lesions of temporal lobe. They are unpleasant smell and they represent feelings of guilt. Patient may say that I am smelling like the flesh is burning. These type of smells are seen experienced by the patients. Then gustatory hallucinations, these are hallucinations of taste. They rarely occur, but commonly they are associated with olfactory hallucinations. And the last type of hallucination is kinesthetic hallucination. They are known as phantom phenomena, where there is no organ but the patient is still feeling. Like an amputated patient, the patient is feeling that the leg is still there and there is itching on the leg or pain is experienced on the leg.
Now, these are some of the disorders of perception, and I'm sure students are there. Are you listening? If you are, and if you have any questions to ask, you can ask, because we are just left with 2-3 minutes. So if you have question to ask, please do ask us, because I do not know whether you are there or not, or you are too absorbed in listening, because the topic is of such kind where you need to really listen carefully and understand them. After listening this, now if you go back, you will be able to understand better. And once you understand, go to the psychiatric ward, see the patients, and you will find these kind of symptoms will be there. And it is better to have discussion amongst yourself, because once you see, all the psychopathology has got a lot of adjectives, and these adjectives are very difficult to register. Don't get frustrated. We as teachers also took a lot of time to really remember this, and now we can talk after so many years. So it is better you spend little time, comprehend it, and unless you see in the patient, you will not be able to remember. So try to go and see in the patient and discuss among yourself. You will be able to recall this, and you will be able to relate to the nursing diagnosis. Once you are able to identify the symptoms in the patient, it is very easy for you to make the nursing diagnosis and plan the nursing care. Am I right? Yes. With this, as we are not left with much of time, we would have discussed all the things in detail. I would thank Mrs. Kalra for being with us and Mrs. Annie Kumar to be here as experts, and I'm sure the students are too absorbed, so they are not asking any questions, or too little time is there, so they are not able to ask question. But we'll try to cover it up in the next session when we are planned, and we'll inform you ahead of time. Thank you very much to all the regional directors who have called us and informed how many number of students are there. May I request you to kindly get the feedback from our field and send it us. I request in future the other regional directors, if the students who are there, if you are not able to communicate with us, kindly send it to us through email or through a letter, whatever is possible. Thank you very much once more.
Thank you.
Finished. But I think student must be just listening like this,
Oh ma'am, if they do not have the classes previous.